Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to the show. I have Miki Agrawal here with me today. Do you want to say hello?
Hello.
What part of the world are you residing in? I see it's a little bit chilly where you are as well.
I am in Austin, Texas. It's like a nice, like crisp day. It's like it feels like fall. It is still obviously December, but it feels like a New York fall day, which is really nice.
I just moved from Florida to outside of Asheville, North Carolina. So I'm getting used to the more frigid temps. It was in the teens when I woke up this morning. So
Crazy.
getting used to it. But I know Austin is also one of those places. It seems like there's different parts of the states that we're all kind of congregating in terms of like the people who are doing big things in the world.
Mhm. Definitely one of those spots.
All right. So I want to read your bio. I don't always do this, but I think it really envelops just kind of everything you represent. And then we'll kind of dive right in. So, Miki Agrawal is celebrated as a visionary entrepreneur and author, is the driving force behind innovative companies like TUSHY, THINX, and Wild, valued collectively at over 250 million. So you're the author of best-selling books Do Cool Shit and Disrupt Her, and you're also recognized by Fast Company as one of the most creative people and by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader. Beyond your entrepreneurial ventures, you're also known for your compelling presence as a speaker, offering unique insights into the taboo product development, creative marketing, and business scaling. With 20 plus years of entrepreneurial adventures under your belt, you've established yourself as a thought leader in the realm of creative business strategy and challenging the status quo, which so many of my favorite topics are in there. So is there anything else that you want to add? I know it's always interesting when we hear our bio kind of read back to us.
I mean, it's just yeah, I mean, it's like I feel like I'm moving forward, and so it's always like looking back is always a fun thing to do. But I oftentimes like, there's some people who like go back to their childhood home and see where they grew up, or go back to their college dorm or whatever. I mean, there's some people who like doing that, but I just I just like I'm like here and then going forward.
Onwards.
Yeah.
So when did you start your first company?
My first company in 2005. I
Okay.
just turned 26. Yeah. And it's a restaurant. I still have the restaurants. Gluten-free pizza concept. My first book, Do Cool Shit, is really all about building the restaurants out and just the challenges of like being a first time entrepreneur and raising money for the first time and getting press for the first time and figuring out what to even begin and create for the first time and just like all the 0 to 1 in business and life questions, and then sort of like what were the things I actually did, what emails did I write to get buy-in from investors, from people, and so all of that is in there.
So did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or like did you have any sort of adversity? Like was there any challenge, prior to being in your mid early 20s? I know sometimes like we usually face some sort of adversity that makes us want to do something different and create our own thing or kind of forge a different path. So I'd be curious to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so the question of
Like, was there some like big overarching thing that happened in your life where you're like, I have to start this business? Like, did you go through any challenge? Like, generally, I feel like there's something that catalyzes us. So I'm just curious to know if that was the case for you.
For sure. My big moment, I guess I would say, was 9/11. I mean, I was supposed to be there on that day,
Wow.
and I was 22 years old. I was just starting out my, post-college world in New York City. And it was um one of the craziest days of my life. My subway stop every morning was Two World Trade Center.
Wow.
And I would basically walk upstairs, get tea with my girlfriend who worked on the 100th floor. That would walk across the street to my office at Deutsche Bank, which is directly across Two World Trade Center. And on that day, 700 people in my girlfriend's office died. And on that day, 2 people in my office died. And it was the only single day in my life that I slept through my alarm clock. And
Wow.
so
Woo.
it was one of those like crazy, crazy, like true aha moments and wake up calls for me where, like the line that kept coming up for me was the mystery of life is that you never know when it's going to end. That was such a line. Like I just was like, wow, like we could die right now. You know, a meteor can hit our planet right now and we're dead. And so like the time was absolutely now in that moment to make every moment count. And I mean, like it was like the most surreal thing. Like it was like not even a believable thing where two planes hit the World Trade Centers and they crumbled and you know it was a terror. It's not even a thing that you would think would happen in a city like New York City. It just and so for that to happen, it's just like life is so unpredictable. I need to live every moment as lit up as I possibly can be. And so that's when I kind of set on my path to say like what lights me up? Like what do I want to do? And I wrote down 3 things I wanted to do with my life: play soccer professionally, make movies, and then start a business. And I kind of my path started from there. And in my book, Do Cool Shit and Disrupt Her, I tell kind of the whole story, but I'm happy to share some.
Oh, I love this. So I lost my best friend when I was in college around the kind of like the same age as you. And I didn't really have like a name for it, but you know, it's like it really does teach us like the preciousness of life, how life is so fleeting, right? Like we only have like this lifetime in this body, like as this human being to do what we came here to do and be who we came here to be. So would you consider yourself to be a spiritual person? Did you at the time? Like, do you have a name for it? Are you like, there's, you know, do you believe that there was some sort of divine intervention that you slept through your alarm clock? Or, you know, I'm just curious to know your perspective on that. If it's shifted or changed over the years, if you, as you've evolved and matured.
Yeah, it definitely yeah, I mean it definitely changed my whole perspective on everything in life. And it was um it was a driver for so much of like now, you know, now. And I'm sorry that you lost your best friend. That must have been so challenging. You know, I've lost a couple of close friends as well. And it's just like, wow, it really rocks you. Because then life goes on. It's not like life stops and then you're just dead, you know? And so it's sort of like, wow, like we really are just you know, carbon and water. And once we go, we go, and that's it. So it is a really, really, yeah. So from there, I mean, I've been spiritual in that like my father's Hindu, my mother's Buddhist. And those cultures like the Buddhists, like I relate to Buddhism because it's um it's really like search within thyself for thou art the Buddha, which means like your God is within you. And in the Hindu tradition, like it's based around karma. And the literal translation of the word karma in Hindi is action. And so it's like your karma, your actions are what dictate your dharma, dictate your destiny. And so technically, like we, our gods live inside of us. There's no one like marionetting us like in like the world out there or anything, but there's this like spiritual path of like my actions decide what my future holds. And you know, like yeah, my God is within me. And like I get to, so there's this like I've learned that from early as a child about spirituality. But my parents, whenever we went to temple, we never were like sit there and like you know like like pray to God as an entity, but they would say sit there and just think about the last 6 months of your life and think about how you could have been better and what actions you could have taken to be better as a person, as a human. And so that was always a practice that felt more true to me
Yeah,
than like listen to this thing that's like God fearing and watching over you and that kind of a thing. It's like a different energetic around it for me.
totally. It's beautiful that you were modeled that at from such a young age because I was modeled the opposite. But what's interesting about what happened with my friend is I was, you know, we were at the same place and she left in one car and I left in another. So again, it was very much about like
Oh,
that
oh,
minute decision of if I would have gone this route, would I still be here? Right. And at that age, like it's so fascinating because I grew up Catholic and I never really resonated with it. And my parents didn't really force it upon me. I mean, when I went to Catholic school a little bit, like they
right.
tried here and there, but there was never, it was just kind of like, this doesn't feel right. And then I actually started studying Buddhist principles as a grieving process because I was like, this resonates. So I just love everything that you just shared feels so true in my body. So I just love that. Again, two totally different life experiences, different ways that we grew up, right? In terms of like ideologies, but still kind of coming back to this like the God within, and like we have the power to move mountains, right? We have the power to co-create our reality, which is so beautiful.
Mm.
Um, so you talk a lot about fearlessness, and I'm curious to know if this experience when you were like with what happened with 9/11, if that also, have you always felt yourself to be fearless in this way? And I've heard you talk about, right, it doesn't mean that we don't ever have fear. It's just about what we do with that fear in the face of fear and how we move through life. So was that something you always had as a little girl, or did that really also kind of catalyze you when that experience happened with 9/11?
Well, it's interesting because I think we often, we talk about like no fear and like overcome fear. But I think like since that concept of like, yes, the idea of like pushing through fear, I think starts with acknowledging the fear. And I think, that was a step that I bypassed for a while. And that came like how that showed up was like my body being in like overdrive for a while and not and just pushing past the fear without holding the fear, acknowledging it, like really letting it say like, hey, it lives here, it's okay. And from that place of okayness, can I move forward? And I think that was a deep lesson that I learned, a couple of years ago, where it's like, oh, like just let the fear in. It's okay. It's not, it's like, don't deflect it and try and jump over it. Just like let it in, acknowledge it, and then let it have a space to breathe, and then you can actually overcome it faster and better.
Yeah.
So I learned that also
Yeah.
after,
I learned that as well, and that's actually what I teach my clients, like as a mentor, like really to embody and emotionally alchemize our emotions,
yeah,
right? Like we're no longer in the world of banishing and stuffing it
that's
down
it.
and trying to bypass it. It's like we've got to meet it head on.
That's it.
And obviously it's working for you because of just the success that you've
Hmm.
had. So would you say, like, could you maybe walk us through in a nutshell, because I know it's a very, I would imagine a very like comprehensive process, but like how do you navigate those things when you are starting a business and a company? Like, you have that excitement in the beginning, but of course there's all these moving parts and things. And then like, do you still feel imposter syndrome? Like, does fear still come up from time to time? I would love to hear kind of how you move through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so normal to feel the imposter syndrome, to feel like, wow, like, I'm leveling up, like, what I'm working on next is like a level up to like what I've known. And it's like these kinds of things are like, oof, like I'm sitting in a room full of, like whether it's science people or, like entrepreneurs who are doing, using different tactics to build a business or something like that. And yeah, it's certainly not. I mean, we all feel that. I think that's pretty human to feel that. And I think it's like, again, how you acknowledge it, how you address it. To me, it's like I'm always the first person raising my hand and asking questions. Wait, what does this mean? Wait, pause. Okay, can you talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old and just explain it to me? Because I don't understand any of the words that came out of your mouth, actually. And so kind of being okay to not know. And I think a lot of people are ashamed and they're like, write it down or not say anything, and they're just gonna like pretend like they like understand it, but then they just, well, you don't get it, you won't even, you just didn't learn anything, so like what's the point? So I'm always like, in the room being like, can you explain that again, like what exactly does this word mean, like what are those acronyms, like what does this mean, like how does it relate to what we're trying to do, like how does that support the sort of the bigger vision, like I don't quite get it. And I think it's raising your hand, being vocal, asking questions, being okay with feeling dumb, because no question's dumb. You're actually engaged. To me, when someone asks a question, even if it's a pretty obvious question, you still were like, let me reiterate that. Because actually, in me teaching it to you, I'm like able to fortify that answer even better, So
Mm.
Yeah, it's just raising your hand, asking questions, being shameless about it, not feeling ashamed to not know, just being cool with it. It's like, yeah, I'll ask as many questions as I need until I understand it.
Yeah, and there's like a confidence about you when you do that. So like I would even imagine if I was in a room with like 100 other people and you were asking questions, for example, and you're just like, "Can you talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old?" Like I would be so inspired, right? Because you're just like, "Can you just talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old for a second so I can actually just
Yeah,
track on what you just said?" Is versus like, right? So there's that like confidence of it's okay not to know, right?
yeah,
And
totally.
that's so much of the entrepreneurial journey and so much of the great mystery as you talked about with what happened in 9/11, right? It's like everything is a mystery. We really don't know what the future holds, not even in 1 minute, not even in 10 hours, not even in 10 years. Um, and so I love that you're kind of bringing that forth. So you talk about radical authenticity a lot, and that's also what I'm feeling from you, right? Like the authentic act of saying I don't know and not being afraid or ashamed to raise your hand or to be judged or to have somebody say like, wow, Miki really doesn't know what's going on here, like, I'm smarter than her or I'm more superior than her, whatever it is. So again, like I'm curious to know, have you always felt it's been easy for you to be in that radical authenticity? Your companies are just really fun and playful and authentic. And again, like there's so much around you claiming the taboo and claiming like this authentic nature. So I'd love to hear how that started for you and if you have any advice on how people can kind of start to embody that themselves.
I think it's again starting by putting their hand up, asking questions. You know, I think it's as simple as like arguing in like like kind of like I call it constructive arguments, where it's like growing up, my mother's from Japan, my father's from India. I grew up in French Montreal, Canada. I went to school in the States and I grew up in a very multicultural community. So everyone was like every race, every walk of life you can think of. And so because of that, we got to argue and we got to like argue a perspective that's oftentimes very different from the person sitting directly next to you. And so it's just like I just grew up used to having to defend my position, listen to other people's positions, and just be in like a constant discourse around, well, that's just one perspective. Well, there's another perspective, there's another perspective. And so there's no right or wrong. So I think from that lens, it just does create an authentic dialogue. And I
Mhm.
think the authentic dialogue just lends itself to more authenticity. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just learning to argue perspective, being okay, being different from someone else, not being part of an echo chamber, and lifting your hand, asking them questions. Well, why do you think that way? This is what I believe, or this is the little bit I know, and I'd love to offer that, and I'd love to get someone's argument around against it, and being okay that someone opposes your opinion. Like even in the creative process, often we get very precious about our ideas, and if someone like breaks them down or says some shit about them, you feel bad or like ashamed or something, you did something wrong, versus like, oh no, we're just trying to make this idea the best it possibly could be. Like there's nothing wrong here. And so it's just constantly remembering and strengthening that muscle. We live in such a like world where it's like, look at me, likes, like how many comments did I get that were positive? The one negative one, it just kills you. And so it's like fortifying yourself, fortifying your argument, fortifying your position, asking questions, being okay to be different from others, not worrying about someone. A room full of people will have a completely different perspective as you. That's okay. Everything is okay. Everything's on the table.
I love this. So, do you still ever get triggered or does it ever sting when someone like shoots your company down or somebody says something like, what is she creating? This is too taboo, right? Like, we don't talk about these things or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can share a little bit more about, like TUSHY and THINX, like there's right, it's talking about period blood and poop and things like that. So I'm curious to know how you've moved through that and if it still stings from time to time when people don't understand what you're creating.
Yeah. I mean, human beings are communal beings too. So on one hand, it's cool to like learn to argue, to be okay with someone's opposing viewpoint in a constructive conversation. When it's destructive and they're trying to put you down as a person, that's like, whoa, you don't know me, you don't know who I am, like, how dare you? And so there's a part of you that there's that natural amygdala that fires, like fight or flight. There's like, you're in trouble or something's like going on because they don't know you. Like when you're arguing a point, they're not shitting on you. And so I think like I've experienced like some crazy shit thrown at me as a person. And that was really hard for me because I wasn't used to that kind of attacks. But again, everyone doing anything of value of note has experienced that. People love to cut the tall poppy down. It's called the tall poppy syndrome, where they want to keep all the poppies the same, and anyone who stands out, people try to take it down. And it's a really sad part of society versus feeling inspired that people are trying to make change and do cool things in the world. And sometimes they, like sometimes it goes this way or that way, and that's okay. Like, let's just champion them versus like trying to find reasons to cut them down. So that's something that I was like, wow, like that is not, I was never bullied in growing up because I was in Canada, I'm multicultural, like played sports. So I have a twin. So I always had some, I guess, a backup, and so like I never really got bullied. And so I really experienced like, yeah, that level of like, social, like kind of like unwarranted bullying. And so I think it's sort of like, again, it's a very dark, it's the dark side of humanity and society, of like the jealousy, the envy, the desire to cut someone down if they feel like they're doing something that you're just, watching Netflix all day long and deciding that's your life. And but then you're like just talking shit on Instagram, just like love to take people down or say mean things. So that was, yeah, of course and it's not, I'm not the only one. I mean, there's all of my founder friends who've experienced a level of success and have experienced a level of like, whoa, experience like that. Were like initially like there was some real trauma work that had to happen from that. I did like 4 years of trauma therapy, somatic therapy, different types of, lots of types of leadership coaching around like handling that, because I'm such a sensitive, creative human that it definitely got to me at that point. I was also pregnant and going through like hormonal stuff. And so it was very difficult as well. Like people just, want to shit. And so, yeah, it definitely was a deep learning experience. Would I trade it for the world? No. I actually feel like much stronger. I have so many tools in my toolkit now that I can pull out as needed for different things that come up, different triggered moments or different hurt moments. I can like really, really access all of my tools. And I think I didn't have those tools before.
Yeah.
And you get those tools oftentimes when you achieve a level of success, and maybe not, maybe you build those beforehand, or you don't have to develop those tools until something really hard happens to you, with you, for you. And so I actually find deeply challenging experiences offer the greatest creation of tool building. So yeah, I wouldn't take any of it back.
Yeah, thank you for the humility in that too, right? And just like presencing that. I think oftentimes when people see there's a certain level of success, or like, okay, this person started, right? Like for me, like starting the podcast or having you creating a new company or whatever it is, like somebody starting, I'm actually 8 months pregnant right now, by the way. So I can totally relate to like, especially with the podcast, and just the more authentic I am, the more in integrity I am, the more people that are drawn to it, and the more, people that reach out. But then it's like the one person who says the thing, and it's like, and just like raging comes through, and just like the emotions of just wanting to belong and feeling misunderstood, and needing all of that. So I just want to thank you, because I think people need to hear in leadership roles, like it's not like all of these things go away. It's that we build capacity to be able to hold this and to be able to move through life in this way.
Yeah, one of my teachers said it's like throwing a pebble inside a glass of water and it just like shakes it up, versus throwing a pebble in an ocean and it doesn't even make a blip.
I
So
love
like
that.
like a pebble or a stone, like when you don't have the tools, you're kind of more contained. But as you develop the tools, your ocean of like capacity just gets bigger and bigger. So those stones that get thrown don't, have, I mean, there's a little ripple. You get to, again, go into the tools, but it's barely comparison to like what it was when you didn't have that oceanic philosophy of,
Mm.
life.
What a
Yeah.
beautiful analogy. That's so easy to like be able to capture too. It makes so much sense, right? Because
Yeah.
as we're like being able to expand that capacity, like you said. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I know you are multi-passionate and you've got multiple companies. I would love to know, obviously, we'll put everything in the show notes for
Yeah.
all the ways people can get in touch, but what's most alive for you right now? What do you want to share with our community in terms of how people can reach you and find you and get in your world?
Yeah, I mean, to reach me directly, I mean, obviously my Insta is the fastest and best way, but the thing that I'm obviously currently passionate about is Tushy, my current company. And it's just really, really, I don't know, important to me to kind of like wake America up into this new behavior of using a bidet. Like it's so much better for the planet, so much better for your health and hygiene, so much better for your well-being. You feel sexy and beautiful. It's like the fact that like we've done so well, but it's only penetrated under 1% of the market of this country. Like we wanted to be like like the toothbrush. Like the toothbrush before brushing your teeth, people were using like Brillo pads and your teeth were turning black and falling out. It's the same thing down there when using dry paper to just smear poop around there. It doesn't make any sense. And so to actually know that water-based cleaning is like the thing that cleans every other thing in your life except for our dirtiest part of our bodies is so baffling to me. And so I'm still like on this deep quest to like to wait, to kind of like take the veil of indoctrination of like this dry paper properly cleaning you doesn't actually clean you, and it's killing 15 million trees plus every year. We're talking old growth forests. And then it's exacerbating chronic urinary tract infections, hemorrhoids, yeast infections, fissures, itching, bacterial vaginosis, all these millions and millions and millions of chronic things. People who have GI issues, have soft poops, people who have pregnant, post-pregnant, when you're kind of chapped down there, a bidet, like it's just it's the obvious solution. And people with mobility issues. I mean, it's just like it's endless. The elderly, like, it's endless, endless, endless. A woman who's on her period, post-period, pre-sex, post-sex, it's like it's just a duh product. And I just feel like, and you save like thousands of dollars over time. It's like, so it's a no-brainer that I just feel like I'm so passionate about and so excited for people to just like try it, go to a friend's house if they see a friend having one, just try it and be like, oh my God, like I feel clean. I feel confident. It's just like, yeah. So I think that's something that I'm like just continue to be deeply passionate about. And by the way, don't go to tushy.com. It's a very graphic anal porn site. Go to hello tushy.com. Check it out.
Thank you for clarifying. Well, what's so funny is I'm going to go buy one. I'm going to go on the website after this because 8 months pregnant, like things, it's starting to get like it's, as over time, it's just kind of like in the biohacking world and alternative health
Yeah.
world. I'm like, you take your time. But with this, it's kind of been one of those things I resisted. And now it's getting more challenging, like
Yeah.
to reach. And I'm feeling that. So, and I'm exploring cloth diapers and I,
Yes.
have been exploring like
That's
using the toilet to kind of the bidet to kind of help and attaching that. So I get to
well,
kill two birds with one stone.
my next project and product is in the baby care space, in the diaper space.
Oh, I
So
can't wait.
yeah, so that's next. We'll talk about it next, but it's gonna impact the world in a really positive way.
When we have you on the show next and it's
Yeah,
ready to launch, we'll talk about it because I know I'll be sharing a lot more about this motherhood journey and again, right, like sustainability and just bringing in this new generation and
yeah.
supporting mothers and all the things. All right, is there any final words before we depart?
No, good luck. It's your first?
My first baby
Oh my
boy.
God. I have a baby boy too. It's the world's best. Just like every phase is so precious, and I miss the breastfeeding phase. And now he's 6 and we just got his first real haircut, and
Oh.
it's just like really, really. every moment is so precious because it goes by so quickly. So
That's what I hear.
yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for spending this time. Make sure you check out the show notes and reach out to Miki and myself to let us know what landed. And we'll catch you next week for another episode. Much love.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye bye.
All right, bye.